Hey everybody, it's Mr. George. Here is part 2 of our story of the Wright Brothers. Part 2, Persistence to Success. The Wrights wanted more, of course, and built a better glider that had a rudder to steer with. One of their gliders stayed aloft a time, flying more than 600 feet. But they still came down no matter what the person aboard did. The Wrights wanted to make a machine such that the pilot could control when the machine would land. They had thought of engines, of course, like the ones in factories. But these engines were much too big. Orville and Wilbur finally decided to make an engine that would be small enough and light enough to power one of their gliders. With their mother's love of tinkering and their own curiosity driving them, they made an engine that would fit the bill and installed it on their newest glider. The Wrights had chosen Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, as a place to test their plane. This spot had lots of wind, and it had a large sand dune that would hopefully catch the plane if something went wrong. They had been coming to Kitty Hawk for a few years, testing gliders and other ideas. They had built more complicated machines all the time. So it was on December 14th, 1903, that Wilbur Wright made the first experiment with the new man-powered airplane flight. The flight didn't last long and ended in a crash, which took the Wrights a few days to repair. And it is worth noting that the plane got up its momentum on this attempt by gliding down a monorail from the top of a hill. The plane had wheels, remember, and so it rolled down the rail just like a bicycle. Wilbur was the pilot that day. The brothers had flipped a coin to see who would go first. After repairing the plane, Orville and Wilbur decided to put the track on flat ground. This would allow Wilbur to run alongside the plane as it was gaining speed and keep the right wing steady. Because the plane had been going downhill on the first attempt, Orville couldn't keep up, and so Wilbur had to try to steer the plane himself. Not being familiar with how to do such a thing, Wilbur steered too much and the plane quickly hit the ground. With the coin flip results intact, meaning that it was Orville's turn to fly. The little plane was launched on December 17th. Wilbur pushed, Orville pedaled, and the plane rose in the air. It was only aloft for 12 seconds and went 120 feet, but it was official. The Wright brothers had a machine that could fly. So the questions for part 2. So number 7, who influenced their love of tinkering? Remember, tinkering was a vocabulary word that had a footnote in the story. Number 8, where did they choose as a location to test their plane? Number 9, on December 17th, 1903, how long was their first plane flight up in the air? Okay, so we're asking for time. How long was the plane in the air as far as time? And number 10, on December 17th, 1903, how far did the plane travel on its first flight? So those are the 4 questions I would like you to answer. You can go back and look at the story and see if you can find the evidence that provides the best answer for each one of those questions. So you want to pause the video right now, and after you answer those 4 questions, what you want to do is you want to continue the video, and then I'm going to have the answers for those 4 questions. So please pause the video now. After you answer those 4 questions, then you can go back and you can check your answers against the answers that I have for part 2 of the story. All right, so here we are, part 2, question number 7. Who influenced their love of tinkering? Their mother influenced their love of tinkering. So I wrote here their mother fostered, so their mother developed their love of tinkering and shared their curiosity with the world. The Wright brothers were very curious young men, curious boys, and this was really encouraged by their family, specifically their mother. Number 8, where did they choose as a location to test their plan? They chose Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, as the place to test their plane. Number 9, on December 17th, 1903, how long was their first plane flight up in the air? Their first flight was up in the air for 12 seconds. And the last question, number 10, on December 17th, 1903, how far did the plane travel on its first flight? Their first flight traveled 120 feet. So at this point, we've gone through part 1 and part 2 of the story. So you can see that the Wright brothers really are resilient. The word I'm going to use is resilient. And this is a really important characteristic. I hope each of my students are resilient, where when they encounter obstacles, they're able to overcome those challenges.